So it's another beautiful day on the Battle for Azeroth beta. And today I will be going over my thought process for choosing a tank for Battle for Azeroth. So I'll be going over the things I like with tanking and what's important for me in a tanking class. And in the end I will summarize it with my top 3 tanks going into Battle for Azeroth and why. And if you like these kind of videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's get on with the video. So the very first thing I look at is pretty simple. Are they fun? Do I enjoy playing this class and spec? If not, then it's a no. No matter how good they are for cutting edge progression, I will not play a class that's boring unless it's 100% mandatory, and in that case I will only play it for that boss. For example, the Guardian Druid in Legion. I have one, but I never ever played it during progression. I want to claw my eyes out when I play them, they're so boring. It's a game, if you're not having fun, there's no reason to be playing. Or well, at least for me. Cause I mean, there was never actually a need to main a Guardian Druid unless you were in a guild that was pushing rank 10 plus in the world. And I am not in one of those guilds currently, so picking the very best at all time is not mandatory. Moving on, so when we found a tank that we enjoy playing, we can take a look at what kind of content we will be running. So I will be doing loads of Mythic Plus and Mythic rating, so I'd like a tank that will perform well in both aspects. So with that in mind, we take a look at the toolkit. What do we bring to the table? Buffs, cooldowns, utility like grips or stun, CC or healing, stuff like that. But I've also been checking the upcoming raid and what tank might have a stronger utility in there, at least on some fights. And the last thing is DPS, damage done. I've always been interested in the DPS side of tanking. If we put aside progress and high keys and stuff like that, one of the things I love about tanking is pushing high numbers. Cause if you aren't dying, you might as well be nuking. And I've always been competitive. I was competitive as a DPS and I've stayed that way as a tank. Because if surviving isn't an issue and you're doing all the tactics and mechanics correctly, then why not focus on DPS? For me, it's a lot of fun to push logs on progress to see how well I can do and how well I can perform against all the other tanks during Mythic progression. So on that note, there's a few things I look into from a DPS tanking perspective. First of all, do I need to sacrifice a lot of survivability on progression to be able to do this? So taking Legion as an example again, playing a protection paladin on progression and pushing DPS meant lowering my defensive capabilities by quite a lot, but playing say a demon hunter tank or protection warrior, it didn't matter if I was pushing for more DPS, at least not in the same way. All 3 of them are very capable at pushing high numbers, but the paladin lost some survivability on progression if you did. So I had an easier time playing around with DPS tanking with some classes than I had with others. And this is purely for progression. On farm, that's a whole nother story. And then going back to the dungeon versus raiding part in picking a tank, taking a Legion as an example again. So my protection warrior currently is just a beast in Antorus, but it falls pretty damn flat in a dungeon environment compared to my demon hunter. And my demon hunter still performs extremely well in raids. So in the better part of Legion, I would main my vengeance demon hunter. So with that said, let's move on to Battle for Azeroth. Granted, everything isn't done and dusted just yet and changes might still happen, but assuming it goes live like this, the 3 tanks I've been playing around with the most are Protection Paladin, Vengeance Demon Hunter, and the Blood Death Knight. So starting off with the old Blood Death Knight. I love a Blood Death Knight, I always have. I love the self-sustained playstyle and for the most part how their toolkit works. And they are looking fairly strong for progression raiding this time around, with a few fights in the new raid where grips will be very useful, and going into the dungeon part of BFA, you can't argue with the power of grips and self-sustain. So with a strong cooldown kit, high DPS output, and really no need to sacrifice much if any defensive capabilities to be able to push out decent damage, they are absolutely looking pretty damn strong going into BFA. So taking a look at their toolkit and what they bring to raids and dungeons, their defensive toolkit is just pretty damn insane to be honest. Having Dancing Rune Weapon, Icebound Fortitude, and Vamp Blood at our disposal disposal, as well as magic damage reduction with anti-magic shell, means that we can tackle pretty much any situation that we get thrown into. Vampiric Blood is still so damn good for self-sustain or during high damage moments to help healers out, and Dancing Rune Weapon still works as a defensive and pseudo DPS cooldown, which is very good for big packs in dungeons, giving us a ton of survivability as well as a load of AoE damage. And tying this in with Combat Rest, Grip and Mass Grip, they're just looking pretty dang good, and not to mention they're a lot of fun to play. The only thing that needs a bit of attention from Blizzard is the rune regen and runic power. It is far too slow at the moment, and there's loads of moments where you can't do anything. You just stand there and auto swing for a couple of seconds, which is just that's not very fun. So if they fix that, they would be even more amazing. Moving on, so let's take a look at our dear Protection Paladin. The Protection Paladin is just a ton of fun to play. They're fast-paced, proc-based, and pretty much everything is an AoE now. Not sure why, but damn does it feel good. I mean, Shield of the Righteous being an AoE? Come on. So with a lot of the changes Blizzard have made to the Protection Paladin, they are looking pretty dang dope going into BFA, both for progression rating and dungeons. They've made their damage intake a lot smoother, and they fixed a few kinks in their armor. And for rating, they are by far the tank that brings the most utility, what with Blessing of Sacrifice, Protection and Spell Warding, Aegis of Light, as well as Hand of the Protector and Lay on Hand. And there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do with those spells, lots of mechanics that you can trivialize with them, and lots of situations you can save. And not to mention that these spells are pretty damn handy going into dungeons as well, and apart from that, they have a pretty strong defensive toolkit. Ardent Defender being a mini-sheet def defensive, and Guardian of the Ancient King just being a beast of a damage reduction. And even with the nerfed Light or Hand of the Protector, they still have very good self-sustain, especially if you have Avenging Wrath up, your Hand of the Protector basically becomes a Lay on Hands. And gameplay-wise, the only negative thing I have to say about them is that our self-heal is on the global cooldown, and that is frustrating as hell. Otherwise, they are so much fun. Crazy AoE DPS, great utility, and good cooldowns. Probably the class I've played the most on the beta, just from the sheer amount of fun they are. And lastly, we have ye old Vengeance Demon Hunter. So as I previously mentioned, the Vengeance Demon Hunter is probably the spec I play the most in Legion, simply because they're so much fun. And going into BFA, they've polished the Vengeance Demon Hunter even more, making our rotation feel a lot better and allowing us to actually use Soul Cleave again. So with that said, we are currently one of the stronger tanks for both raiding and dungeons from a survivability standpoint, utility and DPS. So there's a lot of fights in the new raid where having high mobility will really make things a lot easier, and a few fights where our Mass Grip Sigil will come in handy, as well as our AoE Silence and the new Purge. And moving on to the dungeon part, I mean, they're just so damn good. They have so many useful tools for dungeons combined with their mobility and their defensives and just the sheer amount of DPS they can pump out. I mean, having AoE Silences, Mass Grips, Purges, Fears, Ranged Interrupt, and good self-sustain, it just makes them a natural choice for dungeons. And they're just so much fun to play with. There's no downtime in the rotation, you hardly ever notice the GCD changes, and overall I can't find a single thing that I dislike with them currently. Maybe that I play them a lot in Legion and it would be fun to play something else. But I mean, if they're more fun and better, why would I? So yeah, Blood DK, Protection Paladin, and Vengeance Demon Hunter. Those are the tanks I am currently looking at for a main in Battle for Azeroth. And that's pretty much my thought process on picking a main tank for Battle for Azeroth. And this doesn't by any means at all mean that warriors, monks, and druids are in any ways bad. They are in fact all looking pretty damn strong, and they all bring different things to the table. But for me and what I am looking for in a tank, they are currently lagging behind a bit. They don't quite hit the nail on the head, so to speak, but they are all viable for raiding in dungeons. And I want to be clear on that there will always be a best and a worst, but that doesn't mean the worst is bad. They are all viable. So yeah, that's my rant. If you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. I try to answer any and all questions as well as I can. And as always, if you like these kind of videos and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and ring that notification bell and switch it to all. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.